Hello there and welcome to another episode of a Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Unreal Tournament 1999 because I tried recording some matches of Halo and they all went horribly wrong. There was a match that went 50-2 and you'll never guess which team I was on. Just a heads up, I'm re-recording this one. I've already just sat down and recorded and edited this Weekly Waypoint, but I had a bit of a mental health crisis in the middle of it, and it wasn't entirely fun to listen to, so we're just gonna start again. In fact, let's begin with talking about that, because basically I talked about all the nerdy geeky things that I normally do in a Weekly Waypoint, and then suddenly became very self-aware and self-obsessive and pretty down on myself about that fact. And this is actually something which has happened before. It hasn't happened for a long time, but I have had Weekly Waypoints far in the past where I've just had to throw out a commentary and do it again because I've second guessed myself in the middle of a recording. But the Weekly Waypoint is the show where I talk about the nerdy things and the geeky things and the content consuming things in my life. So that is what I will proceed to do. Firstly, I should acknowledge my annoyed tone as well. I just recorded this bit, but I pressed the wrong button and lost 2 minutes of talking. This episode of a Weekly Waypoint is fucking cursed, I swear to God. Firstly then, Bleach. I haven't watched last week's episode of Bleach, and now I haven't watched this week's episode of Bleach. I've been quite busy, and it is a video, and unfortunately when I turn things into video projects, they take longer to do. I can't just watch the latest episode of Bleach when I go to bed, because then my thoughts on it won't be fresh when I talk about them in the morning, and I like to get obsessive over that kind of thing, but I will get around to it. It won't be, weekly on schedule like with everyone else, but I make these videos for fun and I enjoy talking about these things, so I'm just gonna say screw being on time and just do it my way. But might as well throw the fucking jealous girlfriend meme up of the guy looking back at a different girl, and the girl he's with is Bleach and the girl he's looking back at is Ahsoka, because Ahsoka has just started streaming, and oh my god, it's so good. I've heard that there are some critics out there who have done critical things and pointed at certain things and said, oh, this isn't so good because of these reasons, but I'm here to tell them that no, this is fucking amazing. Now, I will admit, I also said Obi-Wan was fucking amazing, and now that there is some distance between us and Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm able to see the fan servicey parts for what they are and agree that yes, it had some points which weren't necessarily the best. But I feel like Ahsoka doesn't follow those same problems. It is, Obi-Wan Kenobi was also a legitimate news story, quote unquote, but it feels more like a legitimate news story. It feels like a direct sequel to Rebels. And for the same reason, I worry that people who haven't watched Rebels and haven't watched the Clone Wars might be slightly lost. I would be very curious to hear from people who haven't watched those shows and are watching Ahsoka as to what they think about the show, because I think it does a nice job of succinctly catching the viewer up with the events of what's happened and setting up a new plot for everyone to follow together, but at the same time, it must also feel to people that they've just been given the Cliff Notes version of a different story that's already been told, right? And as such, you don't have the same attachments to these characters on the screen or their cause to rescue this character that you've never heard of. So I imagine the Ahsoka show is probably hitting better for those of us who did watch Rebels, and I think that's potentially unfortunate because I never want to have to recommend someone 2 entire different shows before the one that I want them to watch. It feels a bit Final Fantasy XIV in that way, but at the same time I don't know that you would be able to tell such a fun and effective story without the previous 2 shows having occurred, so it's an interesting conversation to have. It's like the MCU problem. While every MCU movie for the most part is pretty self-contained unless it's a direct sequel like 4-2 or something, then you can, for the most part, just go and enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy as a standalone movie, but at the same time, in a lot of those movies, there's those offshoots of oh, that's referencing something from this other movie, and this is building up to something that's been happening across this entire arc, and, can you truly enjoy these things to the full extent of their narrative ability if you are cut off from the recommended reading list, I guess we'll call it? But yeah, as far as my personal opinion goes, I'm absolutely loving Ahsoka 2 so far. The 2 episodes in that we're at. and I'm really looking forward to Wednesdays going forwards. I just saw several confirmation emails from Microsoft about orders that I did not remember placing and nearly shat myself, but that's because I redeemed a bunch of Game Pass perks. I love that for me. That always fucking happens. Now, I think I was already reading this book last week, but I didn't mention it. I am reading Fred Saberhagen's first book of Swords, which means that yes, I am now reading 3 books concurrently. And in the original version of this video, I had an entire 8-minute rant about the way I consume content and how it affects my potentially ADHD-addled brain, but we're going to skip all that and just talk about the first book of Swords. How does that sound? Good? That sounds good to me. Now, of course, I will be directly comparing it to Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, because that's the other main series that I'm currently reading right now, and they are both fantasy series. One of them's a trilogy and one of them's a long sprawling epic saga, so they're not exactly the same thing, but I will say I find the first book of Swords to be extremely refreshing, in that, once again, I am starting a journey from the beginning, so there aren't 7,000 characters and 20 different locations to keep on top of. There is just, so far I think I've counted there's like 7 named characters and a couple of different points of view, and it's just, it's easy to follow, it's taut writing, it's not self-contained, but it's more contained than Winter's Heart, which every now and again brings up other locations you've never heard of and other characters you've never heard of, and I'm not saying it's better than the Wheel of Time, I'm just saying that it's what my brain is responding to better at this moment in time due to burnout from reading such a long epic fantasy series. I'm also aware that there is a longer series after the original trilogy of the Books of Swords. There's like the Lost Books of Swords, I think, but so far I'm just on the first Book of Swords. I'm taking things slowly. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be dedicating myself to reading every book in the series. My general plan right now is, if I really like the first Book of Swords, then I will buy the second Book of Swords, and if I really like the second Book of Swords, then I will buy the third Book of Swords, and I will probably leave it there for a little bit, because I'm not really looking to take on another epic fantasy saga right now. I think I've decided that when I do finish the Wheel of Time, I am then probably going to move on to the book series I've forgotten the name of. The Shannara Chronicles, that's the one. I watched season 1 of its TV show and I really liked it. It has the kind of post-apocalypse vibe that I actually like going on, like the Horizon Zero Dawn, the Destiny 2 style, where it's like, oh yeah, humanity happened humanity as we know it happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and we've reframed what you currently know now as like this ancient mythological technology. Like, I think modern day society as ancient Rome is a pretty fun idea, and it's like not really relevant, it's just kind of in the background as like background lore, and the world's completely changed, and I'm really excited to read the Shannara Chronicles and see how that manifests in the original books. But yeah, I've had my head in fantasy novel mode for a little bit, and I heard about the first Book of Swords from Brandon Sanderson's podcast. They were talking about the best fantasy authors, and one of them brought up the first Book of Swords, and like the general idea of it really gripped me. Partially because I just really fucking like magical swords. But the basic idea is these gods have forged these 12 swords with magical and powerful properties to give to mortals to just see what they'll do with them, because mortals killing each other is fun, innit? It's funny. But the smith, the god smith who smithed the godly swords, had his own little prank, his own little hashtag social experiment going on, and he made it so that those magical swords could also kill gods. And it hasn't really come up yet. So far I've met one character with one magical sword, and he's just run into another character with another one, and no one's really, given an idea to, hey, maybe we should go and kill the gods for being bastards, but I'm sure it'll come up. There's still like 3 books worth to read, I don't know if you should really be recommending books after 7 chapters, but it's a good book so far, and I do recommend it. Okay, this is more like it. This is going far better than the original recording. It was around about this time that I started to get super self-obsessive and break down about, but how do ADHD brain figure out enjoying stories? Why am I reading so much of different things? Christian, it's okay. Just do your thing. Just go with the flow. Okay, moving on. Sorry, is this a bit weird? This might be a bit weird. This might not be much better than the original one for different reasons. I've pre-ordered Starfield's Game Pass upgrade thing because it's 30 quid and not 80. Last week I talked a lot about how I was going to change my approach to video games, and I wasn't going to wrap my identity up with certain game worlds, and I wasn't going to expect the world of games that have been rated super highly. I think Baldur's Gate 3, it hasn't been a learning experience, but like it's been a confirmation of this new ethos I guess I've developed around how to consume media, because there are so many people on my Twitter feed who talk about playing a game for 8 hours a day and not being able to tear themselves away from it and dreaming about it when they go to sleep at night, and it's the best game in the world and there's never been a better game, and meanwhile I haven't launched a game in half a week and I've kind of forgotten I own it sometimes, and I'm enjoying the game at about an 8 out of 10 level, maybe a 7 out of 10 level, not because of objective reasons, but because of subjective reasons, if criticism can ever truly be objective anyway. And the same might happen for me with Starfield. I think I am more predisposed to be obsessed with Starfield because I am obsessed with Bethesda RPGs, and I very much love the idea of space exploration in the No Man's Sky kind of a way, which they seem to be going for with Starfield, hence why I decided to throw down the £30 and pre-order the Game Pass Deluxe Edition upgrade so that I could play it early and also get the DLC and stuff. I am fairly confident that I am going to love this game, but unlike the me of a few months ago, I am no longer fully expecting to lose myself in that world and have it be my everything for like a month at a time. I might be done with the game for the moment by the time the actual normal release window comes out, and that'll be fine. However, I have got a week off, coincidentally, again, just like with Diablo 4. They announced the release date after the fact, and I was like, no fucking way, I've got that week off, hell yeah dude. But I have got that week off and I would like to be able to play it for the first half of my week off instead of just the second half. So I will be exploring space on the 1st, although I do have a therapy appointment on the 1st, which is kind of annoying. She was like, hey, when's good for your next appointment? 2 weeks from now? And I saw the 1st of September, and I thought of Starfield. I was like, yeah, that's fine. We'll talk about my dumb brain when I want to be exploring space, that's fine. For those of you who don't know, I'm getting therapy for anxiety, could you guess? But yeah, if Starfield takes me away on a magical journey that consumes my entire life for weeks at a time, that'll be great. If it's a fun distraction for a couple of hours every now and then, that's also great. That's kind of how I treat Skyrim these days anyway, and Skyrim is still one of my favourite games of all time. Oh, sorry, it's just occurred to me, I completely forgot to mention what's going on with Unreal Tournament in this video. We were doing so well, we were so structured and everything. I didn't realise that it had defaulted to a 10-minute match, which wasn't long enough for a weekly waypoint, so I set up this dumb second 5-minute match, which is all flat cannons, and also it's got the fat boy mode on, which means that the better you're doing, the fatter you get, which means you have a bigger hitbox and it evens out the playing field a little bit, and the worse you do, the thinner you get, because dying is just nutritious like that. Okay, now I know I had 4 main topics, and I talked less extensively about all of them to make room for my mental health crisis, so what am I missing? What did I talk about? Oh, that's right, Spider-Man. I'm back on the Marvel Unlimited subscription train because Reese read me the wiki page for the Black Knight and I went, I fucking love Marvel comics, you son of a bitch, I'm in. But instead of reading the Black Knight like a normal person would do, I continued my read-through of not everything that Spider-Man has ever done, but a good chunk of it. For those of you who have missed it in previous weekly waypoints, I'm an on and off reader of a something called you were doing so well, dude. I use comicbookreadingorders.com to basically follow a reading order of Spider-Man and like all the important stuff and cut out all of the middle guff which isn't important so that I can actually get through 60 years of Spider-Man in a sane amount of time. And I'm currently at a point where it's recommended me a limited series called Another Fine Mess, I think it's called, and it's a crossover series between Spider-Man and Wolverine, and it's very silly, and I like it a lot. It was made in like 2010 or something, and it's got time travel shenanigans, and it's got big, absurd, bombastic set pieces, and I absolutely love it. I'm only like 4 out of 6 issues for it right now, but if I had bought this as like a volume of comics, I would be delighted with it. You don't really need to be up to date on what's going on with Spider-Man or what's going on with Wolverine to enjoy it, so if you just want something quick and easy to read, that's lots of fun. I recommend Another Fine Mess, which is a Spider-Man and Wolverine crossover. It's good. And if you've got any comic book recommendations for me that are within the Marvel sphere, let me know, because I'm currently in that neighborhood. The friendly neighborhood, which contains a man of spider-like powers. But I don't just want to be reading Spider-Man, because that's what I always default to, although if I continue reading him at this pace, I will eventually be caught up with him. Anyway, I think that's a bit more of a structured and sane weekly Waypoint, so if it came across as slightly stilted, I do apologise. I guess like and subscribe. Should I start telling people to like and subscribe? I keep telling myself I'm going to, and then I keep forgetting. I don't know. Look at this chunky boy.